is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UPNradio.com.
One of them wanted to be the security guy. He claimed he was a security guy.
All right. Welcome to Security Guy Radio. What's your name, sir?
Thank you, Chuck. It's Carl Herberger. Pleased to be here.
And what's your name of your company?
It's Radware.
And what does Radware do?
Radware is a public company. We're focused on our mission is around keeping you up, keeping you available. Two broad products and categories. One is security products, public company, roughly $150 million of sales in security products. And in that space, we're really known for anti-DOS, anti-DDoS.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a good way to phrase it.
Yeah, so we...
and for my nieces and nephews, DOS is denial of service attack.
Denial of service, yeah. The ability for people to consume your resources and your engineering assumptions to render you down, unavailable.
Right.
But in addition to that, there's many ancillary, what I would call satellite technologies that factor into keeping you up, and we produce those things too. Things like fraud, web application firewalls, things like IPSs, and so forth. And they work together in what we call an attack mitigation suite or system. On the other side, we have the opposite problem, where you have user error, configuration errors, bottlenecks with traffic, bottlenecks with devices.
Oh, that's interesting. Configuration errors, yeah.
Yeah, so we deal with something you call the application delivery controlling technology. So these are load balancers and application performance monitoring tools as well as acceleration tools. Together, we think the problem of outage and delay can be handled by one set of comprehensive technologies and can give you the information you need to be able to return you to green or even as faster than green. So
now, here's what I don't get. So I had a computer in '84 when there were two floppy drives, right? And I used to bring it to the police station and they'd make fun of me.
Right.
We don't need a computer. What are you talking about, right?
I
kind of get the whole network, and back in the day they called it hierarchy security management, and your terminal was dumb. And you had a big room full of banks, and that's how it ran.
Right.
And then fast forward 25, 30 years, now we have the cloud, which is really hierarchy storage management.
Right.
And when you used to take care of your own network and your own stuff internally, and I came from Fox and Disney, right?
Right.
Now there's all this outsourcing.
That's right.
Now, is that because the brain trust goes where it needs to be and comes from where it needs to come from?
Yeah.
Because I find that even at the studios, when I had a desktop guy come in, I sometimes knew more than he did. He was 20 years old and I was 40, right? And
so there's many ways of looking at this, I think, Chuck. One of the ways that you can think about this is the way that the electric industry grew up. If you remember when electricity was founded, initially you needed to be a big company and you needed to produce your own electricity. They called that cogeneration.
That's right.
You produce your own generation.
Some had their own, like in downtown LA, the first electrical building had their own plant.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, when the Industrial Revolution started, you would always allow for the ability for you to make your own electricity because you couldn't rely on the grid. In fact, you had bigger requirements than the grid could provide. And you generated your own electricity. You had electricity managers. You had folks that actually helped produce costs and that. Eventually, we all realized, and there's still some of this today, that the generation of electricity can be centralized, and it can be managed, and it can be rationalized, and it can be delivered through the cloud in a much more efficient manner in many cases, not in all cases. However, if you have high uptime requirements or you can't rely, because of a geography or so forth, on the generation or the distribution of electricity, you have to have some capacity to generate your own electricity if you want to stay up and available, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay, I get it.
Yep.
Right.
So I think what's happened with IT is that it's too expensive, just like the days of cogeneration electricity. Really, it's a luxury that we can't afford to have our own IT, to have our own systems, our own hardware, our own software, our own people, and be able to get the efficiency and really the value that we're looking for out of IT. So you have the cloud, and the cloud is now a varied set of production plants
Right.
producing IT services that are rendered to us. And I think that provides for a lot of value, but it also provides for a lot of risk. Availability is one of the biggest risks to that. The
Right.
cloud goes down. Typically in today's business environment, you go down.
Right.
So it's a symbiotic relationship. It's one of the things we're trying to protect, is how do you protect uptime when you're not in control of essentially your uptime.
And you can't really be, because the way you describe the network now, it's out there for everybody. It's not just your network.
Yeah, that's right.
Not your intranet anymore,
yeah.
per se. Yeah.
So some of this is what do we have today and what does the future look like? I think today we have a system of networks that are dependent on each other. I think in the future we'll have a lot more isolated systems. The Internet of Things is ushering in a whole other way in which approaching networking. Maybe you have lightweight networking, you have heavyweight networking, and so forth. Things don't need HTTP, right? HTTP, Hypertext Protocol, is designed for people who can't understand numbers.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
They need nice pictures, right?
Right.
And good, nice names that they can remember. You don't need this with things. So I think what you're going to find is a fractioning of networks, and it's not going to be just the Internet any longer.
So, back in the day at the studios, we had mostly cops ran studios.
Right.
And they were actually studio police departments originally.
Right.
With the FBI registered and everything, right? And there's a good reason for that. There was protecting of the clients, which are the stars, and we want to keep it in-house and stuff
Right.
like that. And then we started getting high-tech. The model changed to, let's bring an IT guy in here, and then it became, let's put the IT guy in charge
Right.
of physical security and network security.
Right.
What do you think about that? I got some opinions on that.
Yeah, so it's a fabulous question about the convergence between physical security and information security, which I think is an immutable trend. Why is that trend? Well, I think a lot of it is because the physical security space on detection is clearly going IP, Internet Protocol, where it used to be all proprietary protocol.
Right.
And once you have an IP, you don't need to have the same kinds of unique kind of detection people that you would have when you can actually maybe conserve cash, conserve resources, and actually use the same folks that are doing your IT security do the alerting that are coming off of your physical security
Right.
devices. So in pursuit of efficiency, you find a lot of convergence that's going on, there's no doubt. In addition, the IT allows for things that are unbelievably powerful from a detection standpoint, which were never allowed for before in an analog physical security system. So for example, video surveillance, what's happening there? Today, you can actually leverage everybody's camera. You don't need one specific camera set up in one specific area. There's now technology that you can leverage every camera available to you, including mobile cameras on people's phones and so forth, to be able to detect something.
Right.
This is an amazing brand new. Also, cameras now can also detect not just visual images and behaviors within visual images, but they can detect fires. They can detect when people have accelerated heartbeats, or they have temperatures. When you think of biohazards and so forth, right? So you can actually get these into platforms that are more beyond physical security. They're really something other than physical security.
So here's my divergence with that
Right.
argument, which is a good one.
Yeah.
And first, it's driven by money.
Yep.
Oh, and just to backtrack a little bit, I talked about this on a white paper once. There was a trend back in the 90s when I was using the internet, and if you typed in the word security, it meant locks, keys, guards. It doesn't mean that anymore.
That's right.
You have to actually type in physical security,
Right.
which is at the bottom of the search engine,
Right.
and all security means IT now, which is
Right.
interesting. So that industry lost their own name and brand,
Right.
and now it's the computer guys. Now, I've had many computer guys tell me this. I can program this to do what you want me to do. I
Right.
can make it alert. I can make it do things. I don't know how to catch a bad guy. I don't understand the people component
Yeah.
to understand intent,
Yeah.
to assign maliciousness to something that would not look malicious, right?
Yeah.
So this is where I'm a little concerned, that if we make it all digital and all automatic, and we lose that human component, which is your intuition, your training, your instinct, and we don't know how to prosecute the guy, it's all for naught, right?
So this is the funny part about it, Chuck. This is what my keynote's actually about. The keynote is how we're taking distributed technical systems that are not smart, but they're automating things. They're automating, let's say, the ability to do quickly behavioral analysis on somebody left a bag behind, or the fact that somebody is sweating, or the fact that somebody has an elevated heartbeat. They're automating things, but you're right. Today, it still goes to a person to be able to do the fundamental analysis,
Right.
and to figure out whether or not that's good or bad.
What does it mean? Right.
In the not-too-distant future, the pursuit of all of this is to make sure that the biggest problem that we have today, which is the human analysis element, is no longer human, right? That the speed and the problem, the amount of endpoints, if you will, people on the physical security side of the house, the amount of algorithms that have to be applied against the endpoints allows it to be not a human problem. You cannot get the dexterity out of a human mind
No, you can't.
people
Right.
to be able to actually insurmount the problem. All of that today, if you look in the labs, the R&D labs of physical security and information security organizations, they're in pursuit of what is fundamentally artificial intelligence on actually identifying what's going wrong.
Right.
There's two major breakthroughs that have gone on in the last 2 or 3 years. One is being able to have computers recognize facial.
And we're here with that. It works.
Yeah,
10 years ago it was
it
infant.
was,
Now,
right.
yeah.
But not just facial, but facial in crowds or scores of people.
Anytime I put something on Facebook, they recognize my sister in a dimly lit bar. It's like, how did you know that's my sister, right? It's very good. It's amazing.
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
And Google in particular is really, they purchased a couple of companies, and they're really a vanguard in this kind of area. So I think what you're suggesting is true historically. I think going forward, both the opportunity and maybe also like a huge risk in terms of what does this mean for us as people when we have basically computers thinking for us.
Yeah, and I've talked to some people, at Microsoft and such, and I've been told that they're, the big bosses, the big tech companies actually sit up and think about AI and worry about AI and consider it. My version of it is this, that it's going to get to a point where it says,
I know what to do.
I know what to do. I'm going to write my own code, and I'm going to go do this.
Yeah,
and it may go against what we wanted to do, unfortunately.
Yeah, that concept is called singularity.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with
No,
this.
I'm not. Let's talk about that. Yeah.
So singularity is a broad concept, which is exactly what you suggest, is that there will become a day in a lab or otherwise where, unbeknownst to us, our computer will do something without programming because of its own free will.
Here's another thing I thought about. Less than free will, and I tried to explain this to somebody once, and I didn't do a good job, so you help me out. If you put 1 million monkeys in 1 million typewriters, you know this thing, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, they're going to type War and Peace just because they type so much.
It's a math problem, yeah.
It's a math problem, and
Right.
I'm thinking, my son's a mathematician, we go over this stuff all the time,
Yeah.
and he says, well, yeah, technically, right?
Yeah.
So instead of what you're saying, I'm suggesting that maybe enough code is written, and you know what? There's no code that's never been written now.
Right.
Therefore, I'm just going to choose from my library of code and insert it. Instead of writing their own, they might just go find it.
Well, actually,
and act,
I think
right?
I think we're saying the same thing. In fact,
Okay.
one of the claimers, one of the foundational people that basically is pointed to on the concept of singularity is a fellow named Kurzweil, Kurzweil. Kurzweil is a mathematician. And his claim to singularity is not a claim around this idea that we'll have a specific kind of technology or a specific algorithm that will lead to singularity. It's simply a math problem, like you're suggesting, right?
It is a math problem, yeah.
Now, here's the difference, though, is that he has dates and times associated with it, right?
Because he did the math to figure out when that's going to
It's
happen.
a logarithmic
Interesting.
scale.
Wow.
Right? So he suggests, as we stand right now, that it'll be 2023.
That soon?
That soon, right? So I won't be able to
Wow.
retire. When at least, at least in a lab, and then he actually takes it out to a very broad spectrum. Now it sounds like scary stuff, and by the way, my keynote has a lot of this in it, but it's different than any place we've been before. And the reason why is this: in about 6,000 years of human evolution around offloading physical labor, it's all been about tools on physical, even robots in factories, even the robots that we've come to know and love, they've not offloaded thinking. We've never had that capacity, right? When and if this happens, this artificial intelligence, and not just this, I think we're moving down this road where fundamentally we are beginning the process of outsourcing fundamental thinking. First,
Interesting concept.
In piece, and then second, in whole. Automation plays into AI like a transistor plays to a computer. A computer needs the ones and zeros.
Right.
In order for you to get actionable AI, you need automation. The tool has to be able to not only be able to think, but then take quick action on it, right? So what's happening in the physical security space is you have tremendous automation going on, and orchestration, and the automation of provisioning. You can quickly throw detection or mitigation devices. You can quickly do alerting. You can provision new capabilities quickly, and frankly, you can automate the whole process, right? That's what's key for once you start thinking or offloading thinking for you to be able to get things done, to take things. So what's happening right now is we're going through a process, another revolution, really, where we're offloading or outsourcing or otherwise changing the way in which we will get thinking accomplished. And I think that that's very different in human evolution. And who's to guess where things going down the road? If you believe Kurzweil, he said 2023 will be roughly plus or minus. By the way, he said this year computers now think better than mice do. Mice's mind, right, this year. That happened in 2015. Yeah. And he says in 2045, and this is kind of like, in some ways for me, a little psychobabble, but he says in 2045 on the same logarithmic scale, a single computer will have more capacity than every single human on the face of the earth thinking at the same time.
I read, like what's going to happen in 2025, and one of the things they said is they're going to come up with computers that are biological, because a hard drive only spins so fast that it melts, right?
Right.
And they think they might match the speed of a human brain.
Yeah.
One thing I've always been frustrated about my entire computer career, it's not as fast as me thinking. And I'm no genius, by the way.
I'm pretty sure most computers are faster than me at this moment. I think that changed this year, if you know what I mean.
So really, this is kind of, if I boil this down for my nieces and nephews that are musicians, by the way, they got their own record label and band and everything, right?
Nice.
And I say, look, Damien, Taylor, eventually there will be no song that was never written.
Right.
Right? Mathematically.
Yeah. Right.
And that would happen to me sooner than what this guy's talking about.
Well,
but
actually,
it won't. You know why? Because the humans write the songs. Now the computers themselves are writing their own things,
they
evolving their own way. So that amount and ability to write things quickly and do the code, it's exponentially growth.
There's a big fallacy that computers are not creative. Actually, there's already today, there's computer-generated art, which was imperceptible from human art. There's computer-generated music that's imperceptible from human.
It's true.
It's unbelievable.
Well, but a human still has to do that, right? Are you talking about a computer coming up with its own?
Well, coming up with their own computer-generated, it's amazing, right? Now, just as a point of reference, the New York Stock Exchange today, how many humans are involved in the tradings?
20,000 maybe?
20% of all the changes today, and none on the floor. There's no more voice calls. And by the way, it's not just the New York Stock Exchange, it's all stock exchanges. 80% of all stock exchange trades today are completely AI.
See, now that's a little scary.
It's completely, of course.
Waddell Reed, a company you're familiar with maybe, right?
Yeah.
They're pretty much strictly an algorithm for
right.
the market. We know that when these things happen, we're going to take your money and put it over here, then we're going to move it around. And I compared the notes, and guess what? They're pretty good.
That's right.
They're really not that far off from some genius stock market guy.
Right.
Very interesting.
And reliable, they don't sleep, it's predictable. And by the way, from an insurance perspective and otherwise and all sorts of different levels, you could see where this would be a preferential route.
Right.
You can see situations where people said, listen, I've got a job, humans need not apply.
I'm still worried. Maybe it's because my hair's white, but...
No, I'm with you. I think there's big questions, huge questions that this opens up. The challenge that is that I think most people are struggling with the idea that this will come, as opposed to understanding and embracing the fact that this is. It's not that it will come. And then what do we do about it? Jurisprudence-wise?
Well, we talked about that before the show, right?
Yeah.
So I remember this stuff coming up when I had this case in Fox where there was a distributed denial of service attack in 2000 actually. Really, nobody knew too much about that. Secret Service did. They came in and took it over. And we talked about the fact that a judge who's probably older than me sitting on a bench probably didn't have a computer, probably didn't have Nintendo, right? And how can he rule? Not effectively. I don't want to knock these guys, right? But, you're trying to apply old law to new technologies and new intent. It's very difficult. It hasn't caught up. Morality hasn't caught up with the law in those areas.
Think about it. We have in tax, we have tax court. In patents, we have patent court, right? And why?
Right.
Because it was recognized that this stuff is so complicated, it's beyond human comprehension for a general,
That's right.
for a general trial, either lawyer or judge to be able to even comprehend what the topic is
Exactly.
about. I think
Do we have an IT court yet? We should.
Well, so I think there's a whole bunch of things we have to start to think of. These are bigger questions, and you're right, I'm not sure that we have a jurisprudence system that completely comprehends what we are currently evolving into.
Right.
And what the current issues are. There's this. We were just involved this past week in a massive DDoS attack on a company called Proton Mail. It's all you can read it in the press. And Proton Mail is a secure email server. Why did they get attacked? Because they're a secure email. Their risk factor was that people didn't like the fact they're located in Switzerland. They're in a jurisprudence area that allows for non-prying eyes from anybody.
Switzerland, right?
In Switzerland,
like
right.
the Swiss bank account thing, right?
Exactly,
okay,
right.
Makes sense.
So they went there purposely, and because of that, they believe both nation states and other people felt that they were harboring and masking and masquerading folks that had dark conversations.
Interesting. Conspiracy theory stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But as a result, resulted in massive attacks on the company.
Did they succeed?
They were down for a week, and eventually they actually crowdsourced funded a security solution.
Wow.
They asked their community to fund them because they didn't have the means or the methods. It turns out they chose Radware. It's all public knowledge and so forth, and they're back up and running now. But what a fascinating story. Their risk profile was they made themselves so secure that angered people.
Well, one theory I propose to in physical security, right?
Right.
It's you see these guys, black suits, glasses, bulletproof Suburban. I wonder who that is over there.
Yeah, right.
It's not the janitor.
Like you draw attention to
exactly.
yourself.
So, I might recommend for travel in Mexico, you stick you in a Russian Erky, whatever that car was, that nobody drives and knows about, and low key.
Right.
Quick, low profile in and out with people that can pay attention,
right,
observe, analyze, and then respond. Fortification is the worst type of security. And I know that's what people are going to think I'm a lunatic, right? You have to build time in every security model.
Of course.
Because if you can't respond to it, it doesn't matter how big your wall. The Great Wall of China is obsolete.
That's exactly right.
Right. Now, what is the same analogy for a Great Wall of China in the cyber world, right? Are there things that are becoming obsolete? You did talk about the fact that HTTPS is kind of, that's not really where we're going.
It's true. I have some philosophies along these lines too. I'm 100% aligned with you. I believe we paid not enough homage to two broad qualities in security. One is the detection, because everything, let's face it, everything's bits and bytes, right?
If you can catch it before they do it, that's the place to be.
Okay, so let's talk about detection for a second. There is, if you can catch them, so there's two attributes to that. One is being able to actually, with high quality, definitively say this is illegitimate versus that's legitimate.
Right.
Right. That is a rough task, and I don't think a lot of people spend that much time, but arguably we spend some time with detection. That's one attribute. The second attribute, and this is where no time is spent, I think, is how fast you can resolve that question.
Your response to it.
Just the fact that you can actually enumerate the fact that there's a problem. If it takes you a week or 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 10 months.
It's too long.
And by the way, this is where we are largely. So the time element, the delta time, means that people can actually infiltrate and take advantage of the fact that they know your ability to decide and act is so slow that they can be in and they can be out, even if you get to the point where you enumerate them.
Now, this is fascinating to me, because if I take this and put it in the physical world,
right,
and I have a guard at the Fox Network Center, and I got a door and I got access control, no biometrics, let's assume I did, right?
Yeah, right.
All the physical security is designed to delay and deter.
Right.
So I can kind of watch you in the entry process and say, bad egg, come over here.
Yeah.
That happens literally within a matter of minutes or seconds sometimes.
Roughly real time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm interested as to why, with all the technology, the network can't identify a threat.
There's a couple different
and it might
functions.
take 10 days. I mean, I don't...
There's a couple different functions.
Is it a definition problem?
There's a couple different functions. One is the amount of traffic.
Yeah.
The kinds of traffic. So, in other words, a lot of traffic's encrypted. A lot of it's encoded.
Oh, yeah, that's
true. A lot
true.
of it's encapsulated, right?
Are attacks encrypted?
I'm sorry?
Attacks. Do they encrypt attacks?
Course, yes,
oh, interesting. I didn't realize.
A larger part. About 20% of attacks. As everything goes encrypted, now attacks are encrypted.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So it can complicate dramatically
your ability.
So think about it. You go back to physical security. Suppose suppose the attacker looked authentic. It looks like a UPS truck. And you know what? They have legitimacy to them.
Right.
Right? And the UPS truck goes in. Now the whole perimeter security has been breached, but you don't even know it. Right?
You don't know. That's right.
And you may not realize it until after the UPS truck leaves, and then you have two or 3 hours later when somebody says, hey, what the heck happened here, right? This is the world we live in right now.
Or more worrisome is you never find out.
So that's
you never know they were inside.
So the detection is one piece. One is the quality of detection. The second is the speed. And I can tell you, we know from Target, from Home Depot, we know from J.P. Morgan Chase, we know that the speed and detection, even if you have good detection, is a major, major, major problem, right?
Yeah, Target took a long time, didn't they? A week or something, or was it earlier than that?
They were doing their job, and even when doing their job, it took in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 months.
Oh, that long? I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. So by the time they really realized they had a problem, it was already in and out. The second piece is mitigation. We spend no time really talking about mitigation. What does this mean? In the world of security, you have to mitigate the threat, right?
Right.
So it means you have to characterize the threat, and you have to be able to definitively isolate that threat from legitimate traffic. So there's two major problems with this. One is, it used to be that traffic was all defined by humans, a legitimate user and illegitimate user. Today, roughly 50% of the traffic is non-human. It's bots.
Oh, right? 50%.
It's actually over 50%
wow.
today. And by the way, in the next 5 years, the amount of human traffic will be less than 10% relative to bot
That's
traffic.
amazing.
Right. So we have to actually define and understand the legitimacy of automated processes, which we call bots today, and unautomated processes, right? So the problem is exponentially getting harder. And the tools you have available to you to actually do the mitigation is becoming less and less relevant. So there's quality of mitigation.
Well, two-way authentication is not relevant?
So let me talk about mitigation. Today, a lot of people go, well, we'll just block everybody from China. We'll GeoIP block.
Yeah.
That's obviously low-quality blocking. Why?
Right.
Because you're going to block some legitimate traffic that comes out of China. Your boss might have flown to China. You might have a customer that's flown to China. You might actually have like a Google engine located in China or so forth, right? So we do these things. IP blocking, I can talk about why IP blocking is rife with blocking legitimate traffic because of spoofed IPs and so forth. IP, GeoIP blocking, ACLs, black and white lists, black hole, all of them are based on IP, and IP has a faulty problem in that you don't fundamentally know that you're blocking good versus bad, right? So the world of mitigation needs to strive for higher quality mitigation. The second piece is fast mitigation. I can tell you that the ability to move from detection to quick mitigation. So let's first get into the idea that we can do high quality detection very fast.
Right now we don't, but let's assume we can.
Then you can say, okay, now I know who it is. Block them. That takes time too, right? And today, that's a double that you can add up these times.
Right.
That double piece of adding up turns out to be a situation where you have people that it takes an insurmountable time for you to get to the actual point where you actually block. So it'd be like somebody coming into a bank and you know exactly who robbed my bank and you say, call Charlie. And Charlie's got to take 30 minutes to get to the front door before and the person's gone.
Right.
Gone. And that's what right now, that's the situation we live in security.
Interesting.
That's exactly the situation we're in.
Do you like two-way authentication? Does that help?
Of course. Anytime you can add more and more authentication. You know, it used to be you walk into a bank, you have your passbook.
I remember the passbook. That's right.
Right. You had a passbook.
They write in pen, and
that's right.
you trust their balance.
And they issued you your passbook.
Yeah.
And you were yourself, right? So there was something you know, or something you have, something you are. Everything was there.
Yeah.
Right. Today we have to facsimile all this stuff through this electronic means.
You ever heard of text power?
I haven't.
So two-way authentication is I log into Quicken. Quicken calls me on the phone. I send a code back to them or something, right? Or my phone, right? Or they text or Google texts you a message.
Yeah. Two-factor authentication.
TextBar does it reverse. TextBar says, we're going to give you the password on the screen.
Right.
Because you're going to send it back to me because I don't know if that's your phone now.
Right.
So what they try to do with this system is they authenticate your phone because everybody's got a phone, right?
Right.
And that's fairly easy to authenticate as far as an IP and all that kind of stuff, right? And then the job is you log into Google. Google gives you the password on the screen. You send the password back on your phone that way.
Beautiful.
And it cuts out that ability to spoof.
It's beautiful.
And he's trying to get that out there, and I interviewed him. It was fascinating. But people right now are saying, oh, no, our two-way version, the other way, works just as well. But again, you can spoof almost anything. It's fascinating stuff.
It's fascinating, yeah. You can spoof. In fact, we've seen attacks where every single attack has a new IP address.
Wow.
So if you're blocking based on IP, it's like a whack-a-mole game. You're never ahead of it.
That guy back in 2000, he sent out 350,000 emails, which now seems like, what? That's it?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But it shut down the whole network around the country
right.
for two
Exactly.
studios.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at it at the day when you could still ping an address. I pinged it, and it went back to this guy's address in Boston, and we found him, and fairly easy to catch him back then.
And today it wouldn't be so easy.
And he did change all the headers. He had a little sophistication about him to try and figure out where they came from. But now that's old school. That's not going to.
It is old school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are we all doomed? I'm not feeling good with this conversation,
I
Carl.
think, no, it's not so much a doomed. I think what happens is it's a chess match, right?
Yeah.
And every once in a while, you get out of sync with the fact that your chess game isn't as good as the other guy's chess game. The difference is that the chess match doesn't really end. Hopefully, it doesn't end, and so there's no destination, and we have to employ technology that helps match or maybe even better against the bad guys.
What getting rid of the cloud, which we talked about, is the old hierarchy storage management.
I don't think it's
not practical.
It's not a practical or achievable event. I
Okay,
think it's a question
we're here. That's it.
I think it's a question of living with, right?
All right.
And there's new technologies. There's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of money going into security. I think there's a lot of promise. But the bad guys right now make a good living extorting through the internet. I mean, what you really have, you have unbelievable new ways to do old things.
Right.
There's talking about, let's forget the cyber cartels and the idea that today it's much easier to make money via cyber criminal and cyber burglaries than it is in the old way, right? It's so much easier.
Or maybe than drugs. It might be easier.
In fact, they say a lot of drug cartels are actually finding it is much more lucrative, right? But think about things like cyber, obviously cyber ransoming is going up, but there's also now things like cyber murder situations and many other kind of more heinous crimes are being considered and thought of. With IoT, you have the ability to maybe manipulate things, well-advertised things in healthcare, like insulin rates and all sorts of things, whereas people now are ideating around the ideas, can I create this crime in a cyber way?
Well, I think Mission Impossible had one of the movies where they manipulated the guy's insulin device, right? I mean, who's the guy that just hacked into the chip in a self-driving car?
That's right.
No, it wasn't self-driving. It was just a regular car.
There was Tesla.
Prototype.
There was also a famous Jeep Chrysler hack that. So these things are coming.
I'm hoping that the white hats and by the way, I'm a white hat, right?
Yeah.
And my computer programmer, who I've had him write custom programs for over the years, always said, "I am so glad you cannot write code." but I understand it, right? And he goes, "Why is that?" He goes, "Oh man, you just be a friggin' ruthless.
Yeah.
Hey, we can't do that. Let's shut that down."
No,
or whatever,
let's
right?
face it. There's
white hat to show, because the decision makers sometimes are reluctant for all kinds of business reasons to act.
Yeah.
Target thinks they're going to damage their image. I stopped going to Target.
Me too.
Because I like their image.
Yeah.
And I was not happy with their dishonest part of it. They're trying to save face. They blew it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, you know what? I expect me to get hacked, but I expect you as Target to be better at it.
Yeah, that's
response.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's true. That's exactly true.
So very interesting.
Yeah, being hacked, I think, is a lot like catching a cold or being sick. It's going to happen. It's an eventuality, and you have to deal with it.
What's a tin can and a wire we can give for our listeners? Some old school advice. I always unplug my computer at night. I take the wireless off. I've now eliminated 10 hours where I can be hacked. Literally, right?
I have a blog out there that I write at radware.com, and one is called The Immutable Laws of Security. And it's about, these are the kind of a step-by-step guide about things that you can do that really, if you're really kind of either paranoid or you don't want to be in this world, that you can actually do to keep yourself from this or help inoculate yourself from it. It's things that aren't always convenient. Of course, convenience is one of the things that helps fight security, if you will.
Right.
So it's not always convenient, but they are very effective security measures.
How do we get that blog? Give us some web addresses and stuff.
All right, so it's a couple things. One is if you have to eschew things like open. We know this. If you have a building with nothing but windows or it's just completely open, it's almost impossible to secure, right? It's just, we know this. Right?
Hospitals are very difficult to secure.
There are many
multiple access points,
Right. So if it's open, software is the same way.
Right.
Systems are the same way. So we can fool ourselves by saying that open is secure. It's not, right? Open, because it's known. So this is the second piece. If it's highly known as a technology, That means that human ingenuity being what it is, they figure out ways to be able to get around the thing.
Right.
So the more obscure, the more arcane, the better it is for you. The third thing, and this kind of blows people's minds, is how long it's been actually out in existence, right? So as a function of time, if you have something that's old from a systems perspective, it also had the ability for people to get to know, even if it's arcane, the system and actually get around the system, right? So proprietary systems suffer from this because they have people that may know the system because it's been out there for a long time.
Can we assume that those systems are compromised and might not even know it because of the time factor?
And we know this from history. There's many pieces of evidence that this is the case.
Okay.
Like the bash vulnerability, if you're familiar with this, an old vulnerability that has been around for 10 years that nobody knew about, and it came out and so forth. So I think these are like three attributes that you can think about. So how do you think about this in your own life? I think you find things like that are not popular to run your systems, that are not very well known, that are more arcane. I think encryption is another great example, right? We all run towards encryption algorithms for whatever reason that are known and well understood. And for that matter, well adopted. I think it's one of the reasons we run after it. It's totally the opposite of the academics around encryption. Encryption is supposed to be, there's an algorithm that's only known or known by very few.
Very few.
Right, very few
and
people.
everybody's got the public key now.
Right, exactly.
Makes no sense, yeah.
So this idea of known and accepted and standard encryption is actually counter to the idea of actually doing secure encrypted communications.
Very interesting, yeah.
So, I don't know how we got to this world, but this is the world we live in, right? And there's ways. Today you can find proprietary encryption. You can find proprietary operating system. You can adopt more secure means if you're really nervous about this stuff to communicate your things. I think VPN services are very, very powerful. There's very good new VPN services that have strong algorithms that are very unique and proprietary. I think you should seek these things out.
Right.
Yeah.
Carl, this has been fascinating.
Same here, Chuck. It's been great.
Next time you're in LA, come on by the studio. We'll do another show. This is fascinating.
That would be
Thanks
fantastic.
for coming on Security Guy Radio.
Appreciate
it.
Thank you, Chuck. It's been a real pleasure.
That was good. 36 minutes. That was great.
That was great.
Yeah. Covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we did. We covered a lot of ground.
And we boiled it down.